They said wrestling was fake. They said the pain wasn't real. They said these superstars were just actors playing characters. But tell that to Becky Lynch as she collapsed in tears outside the emergency room at Mercy General Hospital last Tuesday night, watching helplessly as paramedics rushed her husband Seth Rollins through those sterile white doors, his career and possibly his life hanging in the balance. This is the story that WWE doesn't want you to hear. This is the raw, unfiltered truth about what happened behind the scenes when one of wrestling's most beloved couples faced their darkest hour. And if you think you know what really went down, think again, because what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core. The wrestling world has been buzzing with speculation, rumors, and half-truths for the past week, but nobody has dared to tell you the complete story. Nobody has had the courage to expose the negligence, the cover-ups, and the corporate machinery that prioritized profits over human safety. Until now. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about WWE's safety protocols, about the real cost of entertainment, and about how far this company will go to protect their image while their superstars suffer in silence. This isn't just about Seth Rollins' injury. This isn't just about Becky Lynch's heartbreak. This is about a system that's fundamentally broken, and the human beings who pay the ultimate price for our entertainment. Last Tuesday night at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, what was supposed to be a routine SmackDown taping turned into an absolute nightmare that nobody saw coming. Seth Rollins, the former World Heavyweight Champion, the man they call the Monday Night Messiah, was scheduled for what seemed like a standard match against rising star Austin Theory. It should have been just another night at the office for one of WWE's most experienced and technically gifted performers. But professional wrestling, despite all its predetermined outcomes and carefully choreographed sequences, remains one of the most dangerous forms of entertainment on the planet. And on this particular night, all the experience in the world couldn't prevent what was about to unfold in that ring. The match started normally enough. Rollins, ever the professional, was putting on a clinic for the Chicago crowd, showcasing the technical wrestling prowess that has made him one of the most respected performers in the industry. Austin Theory, hungry to prove himself against a main event star, was matching Seth move for move, creating the kind of electric atmosphere that makes live wrestling events so special. But then came the spot that changed everything. A seemingly routine superkick sequence that Seth Rollins had performed literally thousands of times throughout his career. Theory ducked, Rollins adjusted his positioning, and in that split second of improvisation that separates good wrestlers from great ones, something went catastrophically wrong. The sound that echoed through the Allstate Arena wasn't the typical impact noise that wrestling fans are accustomed to hearing. This was different. This was the sickening crack of bone against bone, followed by a silence so deafening that even the most rowdy Chicago wrestling fans knew immediately that something terrible had just occurred. Seth Rollins collapsed to the mat, and this wasn't the controlled fall of a wrestler selling a move. This was the genuine collapse of a human being in excruciating agony. His left leg was positioned at an angle that made even the hardest wrestling fans turn away in disgust. The compound fracture was visible from the cheek seats, with bone protruding through the skin in a way that left no doubt about the severity of what had just happened. But here's what really makes this story infuriating, and this is where WWE's true colors really start to show. Instead of immediately stopping the match and calling for medical attention, the production team's first instinct was damage control. They kept the cameras rolling, they kept the commentary team talking, and they tried to play off one of the most gruesome injuries in recent WWE history as just another part of the show. Austin Theory, to his credit, immediately knew something was seriously wrong. He abandoned any pretense of continuing the match and dropped to his knees beside Rollins, frantically calling for help while Seth writhed in agony on the canvas. The crowd, initially confused about whether this was part of the storyline, quickly realized the horrifying reality of what they were witnessing. Meanwhile, backstage in the gorilla position, Becky Lynch was watching the monitors as her world came crashing down around her. Sources close to the situation tell me that her initial scream when she saw Seth go down could be heard throughout the entire backstage area. She immediately tried to run toward the ring, but was physically restrained by security personnel who were following company protocol to keep talent away from genuine emergency situations. This is where the story gets even more disturbing, and this is information that hasn't been reported anywhere else until now. WWE's medical team, which the company constantly boasts about as being world-class and immediately responsive, took over 4 minutes to reach the ring. 4 minutes. That might not sound like a long time, but when you're watching someone you love suffering from a compound fracture with potential nerve damage, 4 minutes feels like 4 hours. Dr. Michael Sampson, WWE's head physician, later defended the response time by claiming that the medical team needed to assess the situation before intervening. But multiple eyewitness accounts contradict this official version of events. According to 3 different sources who were backstage that night, the medical team's response was delayed not because of assessment protocols, but because WWE executives were debating whether to break kayfabe by having medical personnel enter the ring during a live broadcast. Let that sink in for a moment. While Seth Rollins was suffering from what doctors would later describe as the worst wrestling-related injury they had seen in over a decade, WWE executives were more concerned about maintaining the illusion of their predetermined entertainment than they were about getting immediate medical attention to one of their top performers. When the medical team finally did reach the ring, the severity of Seth's condition became immediately apparent to everyone in the building. The usual protocol for wrestling injuries involves the wounded performer being helped to the back where they can receive treatment away from the cameras. But Seth Rollins couldn't be moved. The compound fracture had damaged not just his tibia and fibula, but had also potentially severed nerves and blood vessels that required immediate surgical intervention. The decision was made to bring the paramedics directly into the arena, a virtually unprecedented move that highlighted just how serious the situation had become. As EMTs wheeled a stretcher down the entrance ramp, the gravity of the situation finally hit the live audience. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a real-life medical emergency happening in real time. Becky Lynch, who had been kept backstage against her will for nearly 10 minutes, finally broke free from the security personnel and ran to the ring just as the paramedics were preparing to transport Seth to the hospital. The image of the man, one of the toughest and most resilient performers in WWE history, breaking down in tears beside her husband's stretcher, is something that will be burned into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. But here's what makes this situation even more heartbreaking and infuriating. As Becky was trying to comfort Seth during what could have been his final moments as a professional wrestler, WWE cameras continued rolling. They filmed her tears. They captured her desperate whispers of encouragement. They documented one of the most private and vulnerable moments in any performer's life, all in the name of potential content for future programming. Multiple sources confirm that Becky explicitly asked the camera operators to stop filming, but they were under strict instructions from the production truck to keep recording everything. The official explanation was that documentation was necessary for insurance and legal purposes, but everyone backstage knew the real reason. WWE was already calculating how to turn this tragedy into storyline material. The ambulance ride to Mercy General Hospital took 18 minutes, during which Seth's condition continued to deteriorate. The compound fracture had indeed severed several blood vessels, and he was losing blood at a dangerous rate. Becky, who had been allowed to ride with him in the ambulance, later described those 18 minutes as the longest of her entire life. "I kept talking to him, trying to keep him conscious," she revealed in an emotional Instagram post that was deleted within hours of being published. "His eyes kept rolling back, and I thought I was going to lose him right there in that ambulance. The paramedics were working so frantically, and all I could do was hold his hand and pray that we would make it to the hospital in time." At Mercy General, Seth was immediately rushed into emergency surgery while Becky was left alone in a waiting room, still wearing her wrestling gear, still covered in her husband's blood, still trying to process the nightmare that had just unfolded. Hospital staff later reported that she sat in complete silence for over 2 hours, staring at the floor, occasionally breaking into uncontrollable sobs. The surgery lasted 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours during which Becky Lynch, one of the strongest people in professional wrestling, was reduced to a terrified wife sitting in a hospital waiting room, not knowing if her husband would ever walk normally again, let alone wrestle. Dr. Patricia Williams, the orthopedic surgeon who performed the operation, painted a grim picture of Seth's condition. The compound fracture had been complicated by significant nerve damage, and there was a real possibility that he might never regain full mobility in his left leg. For a professional athlete whose entire career depends on physical performance, this was potentially a career-ending diagnosis. But the medical complications were just the beginning of this nightmare. As Seth was fighting for his career in the operating room, WWE's corporate damage control machine was already spinning into action. Press releases were being prepared that would minimize the severity of the injury. Legal teams were being consulted about liability issues. And most disgustingly, creative teams were already brainstorming how to incorporate Seth's real-life trauma into future storylines. When Seth finally woke up in the ICU the next morning, the first face he saw was Becky's, red with exhaustion and tears, but still there, still strong, still fighting for both of them. The first words he spoke, according to Becky's deleted social media posts, were, "Did we get them?" referring to whether the match finish had been satisfactory for television. Even in his post-surgical haze, even with his career hanging in the balance, Seth Rollins' first concern was whether he had fulfilled his professional obligations. This is the level of dedication these performers have to their craft and to their fans, and it makes WWE's callous response to his injury even more inexcusable. The recovery process has been brutal, both physically and emotionally. Seth has undergone 3 additional surgeries in the past week, each one attempting to repair the extensive damage to his leg and restore some hope for his wrestling future. The doctors have been cautiously optimistic, but they've also been brutally honest about the long road ahead. Becky has not left the hospital since that first night. She's sleeping in a chair beside Seth's bed, eating hospital cafeteria food, and trying to maintain some semblance of strength for both of them. Friends and fellow wrestlers have been visiting, offering support and sharing their own stories of career-threatening injuries. Triple H visited on Thursday and spent over an hour in Seth's room. Whatever was discussed during that meeting remains private, but sources close to the situation suggest that WWE is prepared to offer Seth a front office position if his in-ring career is indeed over. While this would provide financial security, it would also represent the end of one of the most successful wrestling careers of the modern era. The wrestling community has rallied around Seth and Becky in ways that have been both touching and revealing. Current and former wrestlers have been sharing their own injury stories, highlighting the physical toll that this business takes on the human body. But they've also been subtly criticizing WWE's handling of the situation, particularly the delay in medical response and the continued filming during such a private moment. CM Punk, never one to shy away from controversial topics, posted a lengthy statement about wrestling safety that many interpreted as a direct shot at WWE management. When profit becomes more important than people, when entertainment value supersedes human dignity, when corporate image matters more than performer safety, then we've lost sight of what this business is supposed to be about, he wrote. The fan response has been overwhelmingly supportive, with #GetWellSeth trending worldwide for 3 consecutive days. Wrestling fans, regardless of their feelings about storylines or booking decisions, understand that Seth Rollins is a real person with a real family, and they've shown incredible compassion during this difficult time. But there's also been anger. Lots of anger. Fans are demanding answers about why medical response took so long. They're questioning WWE's safety protocols. They're criticizing the decision to continue filming during such a personal moment. And they should be angry, because what happened to Seth Rollins was preventable, and WWE's response has been inadequate at best, callous at worst. This incident has also reignited discussions about the long-term health consequences of professional wrestling. While the predetermined nature of wrestling allows for some safety measures that aren't possible in legitimate sports, it's still an incredibly dangerous profession that takes a tremendous toll on the human body. Seth Rollins, at only 38 years old, has already undergone multiple knee surgeries, back surgeries, and now this potentially career-ending leg injury. These aren't the injuries of an older athlete at the end of his career. These are the cumulative effects of over 2 decades of putting his body on the line for our entertainment. And Becky Lynch, watching the love of her life suffer through this ordeal, represents all the wrestling families who sacrifice their peace of mind and emotional well-being so that we can have our Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. She represents the wives, husbands, children, and parents who worry every single time their loved one steps through those ropes. The financial implications of Seth's injury are also staggering. While WWE performers are independent contractors rather than employees, the company does provide some insurance coverage for wrestling-related injuries. However, the extent of coverage for long-term rehabilitation and potential career transition support remains unclear. Seth and Becky, despite their main event status and presumably substantial earnings, are facing potential medical bills that could reach into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The specialized surgery, extended rehabilitation, and possible permanent disability accommodations represent a financial burden that even successful wrestlers struggle to manage. As I finish writing this, Seth Rollins remains in Mercy General Hospital, facing an uncertain future. The latest medical reports suggest that he will be able to walk normally again, but whether he'll ever be able to return to the ring remains an open question. The nerve damage that seemed so catastrophic in those first hours appears to be less severe than initially feared, but full recovery will take months, if not years. Becky Lynch continues her bedside vigil, trying to be strong for both of them while dealing with her own trauma from witnessing the injury and the agonizing hours of uncertainty that followed. She's posted brief updates on social media, thanking fans for their support and asking for privacy during this difficult time. But the bigger questions raised by this incident remain unanswered. How can WWE improve their medical response protocols to prevent future delays? What responsibility does the company have to performers who suffer career-ending injuries in their ring? And how can the wrestling industry as a whole better protect the physical and emotional well-being of the athletes who put their bodies on the line for our entertainment? These are questions that demand answers, not just from WWE, but from all of us who consume professional wrestling as entertainment. Every time we cheer for a high-risk move, every time we demand more extreme action, every time we treat these performers as characters rather than human beings, we bear some responsibility for the culture that led to Seth Rollins lying in a hospital bed while his wife cries beside him. The wrestling industry has made tremendous strides in performer safety over the past 2 decades, but incidents like this prove that there's still work to be done. The human cost of our entertainment is real, and it's measured not just in dollars and ratings, but in the tears of a wife watching her husband fight for his career and his health. Wrestling is supposed to be about triumph over adversity, about heroes overcoming impossible odds, about the power of determination and heart. But sometimes, the real heroism happens outside the ring, in hospital rooms and waiting areas, where real people deal with real consequences that go far beyond wins and losses. Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins are living that reality right now, and their story should serve as a reminder that behind every wrestling character is a human being with hopes, fears, dreams, and people who love them. They deserve our support, our respect, and our demand for better safety measures that will protect future generations of wrestlers from experiencing this kind of trauma. The wrestling world continues to watch and wait, hoping for Seth's full recovery while demanding accountability from the companies and systems that put profit over people. This is a story that's still being written, and its conclusion will say as much about us as fans as it does about the industry we support. If you thought tonight's story was wild, trust me, what happens next will blow your mind. So don't stop now. Click on the video right here on your screen to continue the chaos, the drama, and the inside scoop only we deliver. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join the Wrestling News CC family, where the real stories of WWE come to life. See you in the next one.